Many communities have something like that.
It does.
Yeah.
It's very much a newer, innovative thing.
Yeah, I've been talking to Jim and a few others about whether or not the Dexter market can, some of these estates.
I've thought about that for years. That's what my baby dream project in the back of my head is like, ooh, can we open up? Like,
Yeah.
Like, you know,
It's like a market may not be quite there,
I
but.
know, but it, you know, it might.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are lined up here to,
Good, nice to meet
where's
you.
the gavel?
Nice to meet you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Having a hard time.
call the meeting to order, if we could.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes, I do. So, call to order. Would you please perform the roll call, please?
Yes, Janine LaPrade. Here. Marty Mayo is not here. Lisa Pappas. Here. Jim Redmond is not here. John Reiser. John, are you here?
Easy.
Present.
Will Weber,
Here.
Liz Wiseman is here, and Barry is here.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll approve the agenda. Has everyone seen the agenda? Are there any changes suggested?
I would just like to add election on old business reappointment of LPC members. I would like to add that we elect our officers.
Okay, all right, at that point. Yes.
Let's see, I like your sweater.
All right, good. Now, let's approve the minutes of the last regular meeting, 2/20.
Let's approve the agenda first. Should probably vote on that.
Oh, yeah, all right. Anybody,
I'll
how are we doing with the agenda? Make a
move the
motion.
agenda,
I'll second.
okay.
Second, any objections, any further discussion? All right, may we, all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right. And now the minutes. Any comments on the minutes? Additions, corrections? Hearing none, may we have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Thank you. Second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
I got the check.
All right, public comments. We have a guest, Jill Donor, who represents the FarmLink program. Jill, you want to take just a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name's Jill Donor and I work for My Farm Link, which is a linking website that connects farmers, legacy farmers with beginning or new farmers. And it's a means of what once a more organic way to meet somebody in a coffee shop or at church. And a farmer would connect with somebody that way and lease their land and or do a handshake deal and make sure that that property was continuing in farming. What is now turning towards the internet and getting those beginning farmers to see those properties that are listed and available and for sale and facilitating a connection that way. It's one of the solutions that can be offered for those new beginning farmers to connect with those farmers that are close to retiring, that don't have a succession plan in place potentially, or don't have an heir to take over their land. And so it's a piece of the puzzle. There are over 40 land linking websites in the United States. Michigan does not have one until this year with My Farm Link. So, yay. So it's starting up and, if you would like to share the website or my business card, that would be great, just to spread the word and say that we're here and I'm here to help.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
I'll take a card. I will just say too, if you have never had a chance, it is a really fun website. Go on the website and you can see all these properties that are available to
that's far.
buy or lease.
Throughout Washington County or throughout Southeast Michigan?
They don't identify exactly where they are. They describe them, and if you are interested, then you can inquire further, and I guess it would go to Jill. But it's really fun. It's, all different, houses and farming,
Cool.
possibilities. Yeah,
Great,
very fun.
great. All right, thank you for coming. Jill.
George still here?
Are there other comments?
Yeah.
Rob,
Rob's got his hand up, Rob Pattinson.
go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. We had some trouble with Zoom tonight, and John, you're the trustee probably with the most familiarization with Zoom. Can we please get some Zoom policies in place? I called Township Hall and Christie had tried to help the LPC get online, but there was some issue with the logins and Chris wasn't there and Jess wasn't there. So they had to wait for Barry, and it just we need to get some uniformity and some policies in place with Zoom so that it's more uniform and easier. We're 3 years into this now, and it's time to really get this buttoned down.
Rob, I wholeheartedly agree with you. In August, I sent an email to Chris Bailey and I CC'd some other staff and said, we need a one-page guide on how to host, how to log on, how to start the Zoom meeting, how to admit people, how to go into closed session, get out of closed session, how to properly log off, all that type of thing. And then I sent a renewed request for that in late November. And I just talked to Chris Bailey. You might have seen me talking on the phone. I was talking to him earlier about, people who don't do this for a living or frequently need assistance, guidance on that. And a policy and directions, guidelines would be greatly appreciative. I've offered to help troubleshoot it or try it out, so that we don't have to keep folks waiting, and apologies for that. And we thank you for your patience.
Good.
One thing I think
Township Manager Parker was here and I said, we need help on this. We need guidance on this, on how to do this better for residents and for ourselves.
very well. And one thing I would ask you to add to that list that you just stated is add all of the logins for all of the different committees so that they're all in one place and, and everyone can do it. Thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Thanks.
Is it too much to ask to have Chris, our IT person, just here?
I've asked, and there's always something going on in his life, and he's not here today. He's got an appointment.
And I will say this, we're hiring a project manager. His name is Chris Chang. There's talk about assigning him to us and he might be able to help in that regard. I'm not going to assign his work. That's
Yeah,
Township Manager Parker's, but we just need to do things better. Jonathan Greenberg has his hand up unless there is more comment here.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I've volunteered in the past, I'll volunteer in the future, and I'm volunteering now. If you need any help with your technical systems or technical writing, instructions, overview on how to use the systems, I'm more than willing to help. And all you need to do is ask.
Thank you, sir.
Generous offer. Thank you, Jonathan. We'll put your name.
We'll put your name in the minutes.
you were recorded.
It's an open invitation, and I'm actually working on putting together, is totally aside, but I'm putting together a 503C to pair technical resources with nonprofits, locals, and all to help local organizations get over some of the basic humps and do their work efficiency with technology, because it seems like consulting companies charge a lot, and so a lot of nonprofits can't afford it. But do let me help you if I can.
That's a generous offer. Thank you, John.
Greenberg.
All right, any other people waiting? John?
Pam's here.
Hi, Pam. Any comments?
But
I know grandson and I are singing together, so we'll stay on mute. Thank you.
Rats.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
All right, so we'll move on then to reports of other commissions. Anything going on at the Planning Commission?
Yes, but this
Relevant to us?
This last Monday was the first meeting with the new members, Ryan Yapel, Andrea Rothney, and Bob Walsh. So we did introductions, and then we also heard from planning consultant Laura Krebs, and she gave an orientation, gave an excellent PowerPoint slide that's going to be part, if not already, to the Monday packet if you want to see the slideshow. And then we talked about upcoming ordinances that we're gonna be, that's gonna be on our forefront. The Jackson Road Overlay District, which is essentially goes from, Wagner west to Parker with some spurs that go north and south, in between, and that's the Jackson Road Overlay District. And we're talking about how do we transition to a different look, other than a sea of car dealerships, and, maybe you can get a car washed, and, so how do we do something a little bit different, like some municipalities like Pittsfield has done over on Ann Arbor Saline Road, where they're building a little bit closer to the road and putting parking behind, and they've got 2 stories, and they're requiring residential, or how do we get more density along the J-Rod corridor and have more of a downtown-ish type look and feel and use. And so that's something that, and do we change our ordinances to accomplish that? The other one is public UDs. So plan unit developments, not public, but plan unit developments have a public benefit associated with them. So we need to tweak that ordinance. Another ordinance is solar. We don't have any, what about residential solar? Those are the kind of things that horizon issues, but we didn't take substantive action on Monday with respect to these issues.
Thank you. Parks Pathways, Liz, what's going on over there?
We met yesterday, Brandon Roulette is Eagle Scout. He is going to be heading up a project to build a natural play space right out here at Township Park behind us. With his troop, volunteers from his troop and from the township. So we just met with him in an initial meeting yesterday. He's a nice young guy.
Boy Scouts, you said?
Yeah, it's an Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout.
project.
It's an Eagle Scout project, I
Yes.
understand, yeah.
Right. Anna's working on the park's budget. We heard a presentation from Bria Sheffer, and she is one of the park's interns from this past summer. And she has proposed a restoration of the old field in the middle of the Van Curler Preserve, which you'll
Oh, yeah.
remember. So she wants to work on invasive control, and she's done a lot of research to determine what that field used to look like and what
Wow.
used to be growing there. It was an excellent presentation. And she wants to gradually, using controlled burn and that sort of thing, restore that old field. And so we talked about the possibility of authorizing her to go ahead with that and putting a line item in the park's budget for that.
Now, is this the recently acquired property that's
Van
near the
Curler.
parking lot off Joy Road?
It's Van Curler. So if
But
you
I-
walk
but-
through Van Curler, there's an old field right in the middle of it. So, and that is 6 acres. It's not very large, but what she's proposing would work so well for the Sykert property, I think. On a larger scale, it would be really cool. So this is a small property, and it's a capstone project with she took a class that requires a capstone project with either Michigan State or something. I can't remember exactly. And so anyway, this is her proposal.
Oh, good.
So she's really cool. She built the trail. She with our other intern, Sam, built the trail through Van Curler. So if you haven't been, it is really fun to walk. The parking lot is going in really soon, like I think within the next couple of weeks. And so it'll be open. We'll have a grand opening really soon.
Wow.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Board of Trustees, a number of us were there, but John, you want to make any comments on what happened late into the night as well?
Bullet point items, we authorized the purchase of some water meters, $11,000 for the utility department, in part to pay back Pittsfield for those that we borrowed from them. Thank you. We approved the wording of the winter 2024 township newsletter. We authorized the payment of around just over $50,000 from ARPA funds, which were required to use up by a certain amount of time. They were, a few years ago, and one of our audit dings from a couple of years ago is we had these unallocated ARPA funds that we need to account for, use, allocate, and we're starting to do that. So $50,000 for the generator that, didn't do us any good, when we needed it most. So we're replacing that generator with a new generator. Also approved, Dixon Engineering to create the technical specs and bidding contract information for the water tower improvements for our water tower. So if you have ideas for a logo or a paint job, let us know. Authorized money for an AV cart with cameras, microphone, laptop used to host meetings in Township Hall. Gee, what a good day to bring that up.
Mhm.
The need for, how to do things better when we host meetings. So,
That's something that would be wheeled out here.
I think so, yeah, that's Chris Bailey is our IT director, project he would, head up. Authorize ARPA funds for the purchase of a new computer server, networking equipment, software licenses. Item of saliency here is Land Preservation Committee Chair Will Weber and LPC consultant gave a well-received presentation on the LPC's work based on the millages to date. $8.4 million of Scio Township have been leveraged with $20 million in other funds, state, county, federal, to acquire over 1,700 acres. The LPC has currently about 12 applications in front of it at various stages of consideration, whether like, yeah, let's do it, or maybe not. DDA member Jennifer Tankenow and Chair Bob Stiles gave a presentation regarding a possible funding request for some tree fund money for trees on Jackson Avenue. And there was a discussion regarding how repaving of Dino Drive might occur, which is a southern spur off of Jackson Road that leads to one of our parks and preserves. But they, you can either walk on bumpy trails when you get there or drive on bumpy roads to get there. So that's something that needs a look, how we can do that. There's a proposal from Drive IQ regarding to develop a scoping project for project paperless. Like, how do we transition from the boxes of things we do to a paperless system? How do we get there? How do we spec out an RFP? How do we get bids for that? There was also approved appointments to the Land Preservation Committee, Marty Mayo, Will Weber, Liz Weissman, and Tim Redmond, with Riza to serve as the BOT rep until February 28th, and see when Chris Chang comes on, kind of go from there. So I'll be here for a few months. RAC committee appointed Roy Townsend. It also considered the appointment to the Compensation Commission, where a motion to reappoint Monica Knowles was defeated on a 5-2 vote, leaving a vacancy on the commission, which is scheduled to meet again in 2025. Also some ARPA funds unallocated. There's over $500,000 for road improvements with the Washington County Road Commission. It's on priority of what needs it. First, highest priority. Approved a new mutual aid agreement with the various fire departments, mostly in Washington County, a few just outside Washington County, regarding, hey, you help us and we help you, and here's the agreement that talks about that. Township Parker had a request to form a transit/bus advisory committee because the current millage, which is a 0.36, which was passed in 2015 by about 2/3 votes for the AJATA, which provides obviously bus services, but also some non-bus service, like the dial rides and the other kind of one-offs for seniors and things like that. That was our last meeting of the year, with our next meeting to occur on January 9th of 2024. That's it.
Okay. So
Call me if you have any questions.
if we have anything that's to come before the board, for example, approval of a purchase,
Yes,
that would have to wait till January.
yeah, unless there's a special meeting. What do you, we got, early bird special, we must act now before the end of the year?
Well,
Yeah, so yes,
We'll
the
talk about
answer is yes. Yes, unless there's a special meeting.
Okay.
So,
thank you, John.
I yield back.
All right, sustainability task force. Marty's not here, so let's just put that one on.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that tied to the board of trustees? Can you remind me, John, what was the most recent conversation with the board of trustees about the sustainability / climate action plan for the town?
I think it was to create a committee for follow-up on it.
Okay,
So,
okay.
and that's, Manager
And that's
Parker.
still in Jan Culbertson's.
Yeah. Jan would be the best one to follow up with on that.
I just haven't had any correspondence from her on the task force in a while, so I was just curious.
Oh, have you been attending some of the meetings?
Technically, I'm still serving on the task force.
Oh, good.
There haven't,
You should get in touch with Jan, because I know she's eager to continue
okay,
implementation and prioritization
Got it.
of the many recommendations,
okay,
you know.
sounds good.
But you don't have any report or update for sustainability?
No, because I don't think that there's been recent meetings, so
Okay,
there's just
yeah.
been a little bit of a lag, I think, between
Okay,
what the task force was doing, communication presentation to the board, and then what comes out of that, as far as next steps are concerned.
Thank you. Moving to old business, we had digital storage access to the LPC documents. Again, I have heard nothing from Chris, but perhaps this will fit into the Drive IQ proposal. The notion of sharing our documents digitally with each other and with the public. So do you know that previewing study? Basically, the study is just to look at what might be done, not to actually do anything, right? From Drive IQ?
No, the study is to find out what we need. What do we need to ask for to do it right?
From a consultant.
Right, like how do we need an RFP for someone who's in this business. And like, what do we ask for? How do we know what to ask for? It's like talking to a guy like Greenberg, like, hey, Greenberg, Jonathan, we want to know what we need to know to ask for, something like that. So we've hired a company that's going to come in, take a look at our paper systems, take a look at, it involves retention, things like that. So,
So presumably, the need for us to digitize our documents and make them available would come under the purview of that study.
it's all about, that's its rates on Detra. Getting to that state, but what kind of systems do we need? What do we include in an RFP? What specs should we set out to do it right?
All right, so I guess we'll get in line with the project.
Well, no, I don't know if we get in line, I think we just become part of it.
How about do you think, I guess my question then is there something we should do prior to that project being implemented in order to,
No, but I'll let Chris Bailey know, and I'll let Manager Parker know. that,
you'll
like, hey,
remind him that we've
we-
asked for this for
We have a
months.
lot of documents that we look at. and
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
Please include committee work in the scope. Planning commission is, no disrespect, much more document intensive.
I'm sure.
With the plans that they have and the PUD plans and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll leave that for now then. You've covered the reappointment of LPC members. We probably should consider whether we want to elect new officers here, which is a vice president, or chair, vice chair, and secretary. Anybody interested in suggesting themselves or anyone else for any of those offices?
Will, excuse me, who is the vice chair?
It's Marty.
Marty, and
and I'm the
Liz, you're
secretary. I'm happy to continue, but I'm also happy to turn it over to anyone who wants to be the secretary.
As democratic principles, we thought we should at least identify.
I move that Liz continues as the secretary.
Okay,
No,
all right.
Are you sick of doing it yet?
I'm okay with continuing for now.
I mean, you're so good at it.
Well, I've got sort of a system, so.
Yeah.
I would support that if it hasn't already been supported. In under discussion, I would just ask if she's willing to do it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, all right, well, informally.
But okay.
I think
So we
got
need a
it.
secretary. We need a chair also.
Yeah, we'll get around to that. But
Okay,
There's
alright.
been there's a motion on the floor and seconded, so.
Yes.
Should we vote, all in favor of Liz? All in favor of Liz remaining our secretary? Aye. Aye. Okay,
Then I'm gonna nominate Will to continue as chair if he's willing.
I would agree.
I would support it.
Okay, all in favor of Will being the chair?
Are there any others wanting to do it?
Oh, yeah. I don't
No,
think
but I
so.
mean, you know.
Yeah, it's to be fair, yeah. Be procedural. Hearing no other names, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I guess we should get Marty's consent to be vice chair if, Marty, you're not on, are you? She says she's gonna try to zoom in.
I see a guest ending in 52.
That's Tim. The phone number is Tim.
Oh, Tim's on.
Okay, so. Have you, is anyone else willing to do it or nominate is there a nomination for Marty as vice chair?
I'm gonna nominate Marty as vice chair in absentia.
Yeah, I'll second that. Further thoughts about that? All right, all in favor of Marty as vice chair? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Think we've taken care of that, Liz?
Yes.
Okay. All right, under new business, we have to establish our calendar of meeting dates for the next year. So Liz has laid out dates here that would be second Thursdays. And, you know, the time presently is 4 p.m. on those days. Is there any discussion of other dates that might be more appropriate or any conflicts people would have with second Thursdays at 4 o'clock for the next year?
I'm just curious about, why the 4 to 6 o'clock time frame. I don't know if typically commission meetings across the board try to occur in the context of business hours. I know I can make this work. I just, you know, it does take, I'm giving up, you know, I'm leaving work early to,
It used to be 3, and this is
Okay.
the compromise
awesome,
for those of us who are working
cool.
that we, yeah.
But you're not the
Okay.
only one.
It's helpful
Lisa
to
and
me,
John
Yep.
are doing the same thing.
Yep.
you know, we're not all retired, so.
So, okay. Fair enough.
Okay,
So
I
would, I mean.
Do you-
I know, I
like
could
it?
make that work. I could make it work. I was just curious what the context was, like if there was a reason, like, you know, I don't know what the
What are the
general operating procedures are for.
What are the options? 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? I don't
I
know.
guess we can move it to 5 if we wanted to.
Anything's on the table. We just, from the beginning, for whatever reason, 20 years ago, we started meeting at 3. Everybody agreed to that, and so we carried that through up until recently. And folks said, I need to get out of work, and so.
Yeah.
Moved to 4.
Got
There's
it.
no magic to it other than that.
Okay.
yeah, the, moving it to 5 does move it into the dinner hour,
Yep.
but also
Yep.
there's no staff left around here if we do need some kind
Sure.
of assistance.
Sure.
So,
It's like a good compromise to me. before.
4,
I'm fine with it. I was just looking for a little context.
okay,
Yeah.
think we should vote on this, Liz, or just?
Yes.
All right, have a motion to establish the regular meeting time according to the calendar on the second Thursday of each month at 4 p.m. Someone want to?
You wanna move and
I'll move that, yeah.
and I'll second
You'll
that?
second it. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, the second item, potential new staff member for LPC. This is an undefined situation at present, but the township is hiring someone named Chris Chang, who is a acquaintance of John, actually, to be assisting commissions, particularly the planning commission, and I understand the parks and pathways, which are very much in need of further support. Chris is a planner. Joyce has suggested to me that, well, they couldn't fill all of his full-time appointments, so he would be working with us, or he could be working with us on a allocation according to how much time he spent with us. There'd be a responsibility presumably for paying for him. My contention with Joyce was, well, we have a very substantial cost allocation from our funds, over $30,000, and that perhaps would be a basis for compensation. And with the budget coming up, I think there's still some uncertainty here as to how compensation would occur, but I think we're gonna get to the budget in a little bit. Question was, well, what would he do? And one obvious thing
He's
is
a planner?
the Zoom. Yes.
What does that mean? What kind of a planner?
AICP, he is
Oh,
retiring,
okay. Thank
he's
you.
retiring from the city of Ann Arbor, where he's had a career in planning. So he's an AICP planner for the city of Ann Arbor, anywhere from small things to, 12, 13-story buildings. He's also familiar with Scio Township, because he lives in Scio Township. And he's been on the planning commission on Scio Township, so he's familiar with the projects coming down the pike. But he's also a member of PPP, or was a member of PPP, so the commitment to the natural resources thing. So, and he's a decent guy, a good guy, collaborative guy. He'll be an asset to have as a staff liaison to any committee, really. So he's a positive guy. Now, how much the budget goes for him or all that, I'm not speaking about that, but I'm just saying, as a colleague and as a fellow commission member, he's been a positive, solid guy to have. Familiar with the township, been here a while, familiar. He rides the bus, he's, there's a lot that's good about him.
But
Fear
yeah, we
not.
don't want to have him as a consultant or as a,
He's not a
Volunteers.
very, he's not a very Lonnie consultant. He's a like, how do we wrangle these projects? How do we,
We could use them for the sustainability task force, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think we made the sign for that as well.
Okay, good.
He's not nudging Barry out. That's not his role.
So that's my question. We don't have projects. So if he's a project man, is he part or full-time?
And look, so this wasn't.
Full.
I think-
Full-time.
Full time.
Well,
So there
Some
are
of these
groups.
questions
within-
are best asked of Joyce Parker,
Oh,
honestly. 'Cause,
Okay.
I'm not the guy that said, hey, there's a light bulb over my head that says, we gotta get Chris Chang in here. So that's something we could, talk to Manager Parker about that. And I don't know if you have, Will.
I have talked to her very specifically about this and expressed exactly these concerns. And she gave me the sense that, well, things will have to be worked out and it isn't a matter of his being actually, designated for a particular amount to us, but that he could be useful. And I got the sense his compensation will be prorated according to where he actually spends his time. And I was left with the impression that if he doesn't really spend much time here, then the proration won't be, extraordinary, but it's not defined. And I don't think in Manager Parker's mind, it's really defined how his time will be allocated. That was the impression she gave me when I wanted the specifics as to what a planner could do helping us. So we have to wait and see. I think he's starting January 15th. Does that sound
I
right?
think it's mid-January.
Yeah,
So this
and
is
Joyce
approved?
suggested a meeting early on to discuss the possibilities, meeting with him. So, he may have some great ideas and we'll see, or we may discover that there isn't really much basis for
Well, I
putting
can-
together.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
well, I had a conversation with Anna Cohen from the Parks Department, recently. And she stated that, there's a bunch of projects that they're working on that require a project management role. That she's not really that skilled in. She's-
Parking lots preserved,
Oh.
contractors,
okay.
I get that.
And so that's a
But-
useful role,
Yeah.
but she thought that was gonna be maybe 40% of Chris's time. And so the question is, how does the other 60% get
Right.
filled out? And so my sense is that they're looking around and saying, who else could he work for? And, there's some suggestions for working for us. And when I talked about it, I thought, well, geez, we've been doing this for 20 years and we haven't needed anybody else's help. And so I'm not clear on what that would be, and I'm reluctant to have yet another part of our budget be, used for something that's not of direct relevance to us.
Unless it's using the 30,000 that I don't know what it's being.
But still, I mean, what are we getting for the 30,000?
But and Janine though is saying that sustainability could use someone.
Yeah.
like that.
yeah, and it sounds
Sounds
like
great.
Joyce is just, it sounds like the township manager is in the process of
Right.
determining what this person's scope of work might
brainstorming where we
do,
need
yeah,
help
and
who could
so.
help out.
But did we
She's just-
post a job and that person applied for it and we made it
No.
available?
The answer is, who's the we?
I mean,
That's a,
The township?
yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes,
Yeah.
and he was hired in a public meeting, a couple, maybe.
So that was a posted position?
Pardon?
It was a posted position?
I don't know. Yes, I think he applied for a position. I know he applied for a posted position. I don't know which one he applied for. I don't want to get out over my skis with respect to that, but Chris wasn't hired in secrecy. He was known to have applied. I think he may have applied for one of the positions opening and Joyce liked him in this position. So, you know, I think these are questions best left for
Yeah.
Manager Parker, but the board did unanimously approve him coming in mid-January, and Chris's resume is part of a prior packet. I think he was also at a public meeting, so we can look at him, but some of us here have worked with him in other committees.
Yeah,
Sounds
I've
great.
worked with him and he's a nice guy. He was on the sidewalks, you know, the parks, the predecessor to the park
Yeah.
MVP. My question is only how would we use someone like that in our group? Because we don't have any projects. We have,
Well, I think we should give him a chance to meet us
Yeah.
and identify what we can learn from him
fair
and
enough.
maybe something will develop.
And Will, I'm sorry, I was actually, when I first read this, I thought this was a line item about a staff liaison for this committee, which I'm quite confused about based on that email.
Yeah.
So do we currently have a staff liaison?
John. is
It's
still-
John.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not on staff,
Oh,
so the answer is, I don't know that we do. We have a consultant,
Board liaison.
Oh.
and I'm a board liaison.
you're the
but I
board
don't, you
liaison.
know.
Okay, got it. So I'm sorry, I'm just asking for clarification about the current structure and any changes
Well,
we might be making to
I
it.
think you've identified a potential use of him is to interact with the manager and Jessica regarding matters that are of specific concern
Or-
regarding our operations within the township. That may be what they have in mind. I'm not
Okay,
sure
got it.
specifically what those matters are. That's what we have to determine.
Okay, was Jessica's email though about her being the board liaison or the staff liaison?
I think the board
Board
is.
liaison.
yes.
Okay, and currently John is the board liaison.
Yeah.
He just got
Through February 28th.
Okay,
So, do we have a staff liaison now?
No.
No, and I don't think other committees necessarily have staff liaisons either. I mean, it's a,
I mean, Anna works, Anna, I guess.
she's not a consultant. She's a full-time employee.
Okay.
Yeah.
PPP does. Listen,
Who
we
is
got a
that?
heck of a budget because we have a millage. We make recommendations about the acquisition of land. It's not unreasonable for Manager Parker to want to have a staff liaison to a committee that has access to millage money, or we don't have access to money, I don't mean it like that, but who's making recommendations with respect to the acquisition of land. I think there's some anxiety and I can appreciate that, but I think things are gonna be okay.
I'm just looking for clarification on structure. I'm not anxious about anything.
Oh, no, but I'm sensing some, you know, from other discussions, you know, and some of it's like, well, they wanna make sure that the millage money goes towards the acquisition of land rather than, you know, overhead. I appreciate it. But when my conversations with Joyce about it echo you, and she didn't think it'd be much money, it's just gonna be at the time that he serves, so I think 2024 is gonna be okay.
Yeah, and I have the impression that if we set something up and it needs to be modified as we go, we can do that. You know? So,
Thanks for the clarification, just trying to understand board liaison, the use of the word staff liaison from John's mouth just recently, and then the staff member. So I think I'm clear. Currently, we just have a board liaison,
right.
and we'll see what's going to come in terms of staff member and or a staff liaison
right.
engagement. Okay,
That's right.
great,
Sounds like
thank you.
Planner would be a great staff.
All right,
Yeah.
LPC budget. That's the next item. It's a fairly significant thing. It seems that this year there's a more concerted effort to prepare a uniform budgeting process across the township and all the commissions. And Barry and I attended a session the other day where a consultant from Plant Moran kind of set up some templates and some procedures for doing this. This year, we're planning budgets for 2 years rather than 1 year, and it's for the fiscal 24-25 and 25-26 years, right? So Barry, you want to tell us a little more about where we are with that and what you've done already?
Yeah, so I shared with you a memo that I drafted about this budgeting process, as well as a couple of historical documents. One of them was the audited figures for this program for the fiscal year of 23, which ended March 31 of this year. So that was just that year's audited figures. And then I incorporated those figures into a document that's called the comparison statement that shows you that, you know, the revenues and expenditures through the program based on those audited numbers from our inception, from fiscal year 2005 through fiscal year 2022, actually 23 in there somewhere. Just so you can get a sense of where, you know, how much money has come in and where it's gone over the years. And then the third document that you received is the budget template that was provided by the Plant Moran consultant. And to which my memo to you refers. So at the top is the revenues expected for the coming year. So the millage itself is expected to generate something on the order of $686,000. And then there's a couple of other items in there that lead you to total revenues expected through the millage of $728,000. That's just from this tax collection that's now underway. We're on the winter tax bill. So that's the top part. And then the bottom part is expenditures. There's a column that says end balance for 3/31/23. That's the audited numbers. And then the next column, the 23-24 amended budget, is the budget that we're working under right now. And the various figures that were assigned to that. The third column, year-to-date balance, just tells you how much has been expended of those individual budget items. And then the next one, percent of the budget used is the percent. So for example, under consultant fees, it was a $5,000 budget this year. We spent $566. It's 11% of what's budgeted. And this is again through the end of November. So we've still got December, January, February, and March, 4 months. So we're 2/3 of the way through the fiscal year at this point, with 1/3 yet to go. Okay, everybody got that? Yeah. And then the next column is the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. And what the consultant did here was just add 2.5% of the current year budget for the next year budget. And then if you skip over past the comments, it also has another 2.5% for the 25-26 budget as well. But let's just focus in on the 24-25, which I'm going to call 25. So their proposal was to raise everything by 2.5%. We can do that if we want to, but really the figures that we've used this in the current budget are ones that we've used for many years, and I think are quite sufficient. We can raise it if we want to by the 2.5%. The one question that I had in the meeting that we had a couple of days ago was in line 52, which is the land and easement purchase line. The current year budget is $1,250,000. We haven't spent anything yet, and probably, well, we will at some point before the end of the fiscal year. And then there's the figure of $1,281,000, which does not reflect the $1.9 million that we have in the bank right now. And so one of the things that I want to have you do is suggest there to be a change for that particular item, that's line 52, 971.30 is to add on to that number, the 1,281,250, whatever it is that we have in the bank at this point, which I think is about 1.9 million. It's not otherwise reflected in this budget anyway, but is immediately accessible to us.
So are you suggesting we should make comments as to how that should be changed, Barry, or are you making a recommendation?
Well, I think that coming out of this meeting, there should be a recommendation of a draft budget submitted, which is due by Monday. I will make these changes, but you know, with your support, I will do this. So the total revenues expected for this collection plus what we have in hand is, let's say, 2.63 million. And, you know, if you subtract out the other figures, whether it's the current year budget figures or the proposed 2.5% increase for the coming fiscal year, whatever's left over from that goes into that line on number 52. Does that make sense to folks? You want me to?
Well, it's a little hard to follow, but what are you suggesting? How do you suggest we deal with that sort of discrepancy here? Just lump them together, those two amounts, or?
In essence, yes. So if we were to use the current fiscal year budget numbers, that is not increase them by 2.5% as is proposed. We just keep the consultant fees at $5,000 and the contracted services, which is B at 30 grand or 40 grand, the legal fees at 30 and so forth. If we keep all the rest of those things the same, then the amount of funds that would be available to us starting April 1 is $2,491,400.
Right, but you've outlined this in your budget memo, right?
Yes.
These are the two things you're looking for us to
Yeah,
consider or do differently.
yeah.
Okay,
It's actually kind of three, because one of them would be either retaining the current year budgeted numbers or increasing it 2.5% as is proposed.
right, okay, got it,
That's one thing.
okay,
Second thing is then adding the funds that are not identified here that we have available to us to that line number 52.
right, and that again is based on what we're expecting in terms of additional revenue.
And what we have in hand,
What we
both.
have in hand, right, okay.
And that number again is 2,491,000.
If we keep the budget figures for this year.
Yeah,
for
without the
next year,
2%, right?
It's two, as I say, 241,
2,491,400.
400. Now, between now and April 1, when this fiscal year starts, we will spend some money. We may make a recommendation today to spend a chunk of money. And there's a couple of other projects that are in the works that could very well close with that. So it won't be that number ultimately, but that's the number today. So, you know, when the fiscal year starts, it'll be whatever's left over. So if we spend $300,000 between now and April 1, we reduce that number to start the fiscal year with. But that's then the number in our budget going forward.
Barry, can I ask you to clarify in our expenses or expenditures, what accounts for the 61? What is it? The 60,000 that's in the land easement acquisition cost? Remind me of what those costs are, what that funding?
That's what we call the due diligence, the survey, environmental and
got it.
appraisal,
Got it, thank you.
which are, 10 to 12,000 per project. So
Right,
60,000 anticipates 5 or 6 projects that we might spend that money on.
okay, thank you.
And the cost allocation is
That's the third item.
okay.
So,
Tell us about
so
that.
it's whether we keep the current year budgeted numbers or go with the proposed numbers. That's number one. Number two is changing that line 52 to reflect the funds that we have available. And three is the cost allocation number. And this year, the budgeted number for that is $31,284. And the 2.5% increase takes us over $32,000 for that.
So if we don't go with a 2.5% increase, then we could keep it as,
Or you could propose an entirely different number.
yeah.
So what's our year to date on the cap, cost allocation? Is it 18.2?
Correct,
That's what we've been charged?
correct. Which is 58% of the budgeted amount.
So, my suggestion is, and has been all along, that that amount for services is currently defined that we receive from the township. That amount is far in excess of what we're actually using. And it's a direct deduction from our land, from our money available for easements and purchase. And I've tried to make this point with everybody who will listen, including the township manager and most particularly Jessica, who was, I think, the person who helped engineer this whole concept of cost allocation. And I have not necessarily received a welcoming response to my protests, but it's our opportunity to make a statement as part of the budgeting process that we feel that should be looked at again. And you know, what we say in the budget is not the final budget. We don't really have a final say over figures like this. But it's a basis for discussing it again to determine what is the right and fair amount. And, you know, if we have to pay for an additional assistance from a staff, well, that's a reasonable thing that might come out of that money. But that still isn't gonna equal $32,000. There's no way that it will.
I think if taxpayers who voted for the those who paid for the millage or approved the millage or not, it would take them off, maybe not.
They would
Well,
not.
I think some, I mean, I feel like being part of a township infrastructure, it seemed reasonable to assume if the township has a cost allocation model that some percentage would go, but to your point about what's right and fair, did we talk about, are there any other benchmarks to look at in terms of other land preservation commissions or funds like ours in the state where they do or don't have this kind of township cost allocation?
Nobody else does this, to my
Okay.
knowledge.
Okay, so,
You know, other commissions have a cost allocation, but they have offices and paid staff. And they use services, like, for example, Anna Cohen is a person who would come out of
got
this
it,
kind of
yep,
money.
yep,
But in fact, you know, we don't have that kind of person. Barry's expenses are all paid for through the millage itself.
yep, okay,
So in a sense, it's township double dipping into
got it,
commission funds here
got it,
for services they don't provide.
yep,
And that's my view of it. Now, you know, our board of trustee rep here is in an awkward position because he has the rest of the board of trustees to deal with. It was something that the board implemented at Jessica's emphasis, and she had her line of consultants who felt this was a fair thing to do. But the calculation of our amount is
Yeah.
based principally not on services we
Got
receive, but the amount of money that we have in the bank.
yep, yep,
So the more money we have on deposit, now it's close to 2 million,
yep,
the more we're going to pay. And it just doesn't seem like that's the basis for which we should be charged.
concur,
Is how much money are we bringing in from the millage and not using it?
got it,
It's a spurious
Yep.
notion of how
Yeah.
you should calculate cost allocation.
yep, that makes sense.
So the question is, what should we suggest as a fair cost allocation? And, you know, imagining it might also cover, Chris Chang's involvement. We don't know what that's going to be, if any, but something.
So
My
what
suggestion
percentage is it at right now? I'm sorry, well, what percentage is this at right now?
do you remember what the percentage was? figure 1.9, what
I feel
percentage
like it
is
was upward of
31,000?
30, is it in the 20 to 30%?
Do you remember, John, how that, what amount she decided was the arbitrary percentage of our bank account?
I don't, but the argument was that we use township services and so.
We're in a township hall right now. We've got township Zoom right now. We've got township computers, township microphones. I had some tasty water from our drinking fountain. So, I mean,
Lights are on.
right.
Right,
Yeah, it's not like there's zero cost, but some of the other costs that they cited when I first brought this up or questioned it was office space and vehicles and insurance and, you know.
benefits.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, but you contract all that out to me, to my companies.
Right.
I don't have office space. I don't have phones here. We use the room 2 hours a month, et cetera. It just seemed like
Yeah.
that was excessive.
Yeah,
Last year, Barry, you had some historical numbers for what our cost allocation has been. And then we, I think, proposed a number that was somewhat of an increase, like maybe $8,000 or $10,000. So
Yeah, you know, it's hard to be, we don't know exactly what our costs are going to be. Much of them are absorbed by the millage itself, but what if we put in $10,000, for example? That's a third of what, less than a third of what, the cost allocation model as it exists now would imagine we're going to pay. I mean, we could end up paying nothing if we used all our money on property purchases. But if we were to look at a model that says, okay, let's imagine the most services that we consume at the cost of the township. And, you know, set that as a figure rather than this arbitrary thing that's scaled with the health of our, you know, money on deposit. So I would suggest $10,000 as a start there. And then it will come under scrutiny, no doubt. And we can talk about this once again in terms of what we're actually getting.
so what would $10,000, what percentage would $10,000 be then of?
What percentage of costs or what percentage of our bank account?
Well, so I guess that's the other thing. I mean, we could argue that
It's a lower percentage of
It
the
should-
money on deposit.
we should, the cost allocation should not be on. It should be on some part of this budget, not necessarily the whole budget.
And for reference sake, the only costs that we paid for things that would be covered under the cost allocation in the past was for our share of the audit. And generally that was between $200 and $400. We had a couple of years where I think we had some large federal grants that took us over a certain threshold and a special audit had to be conducted, but over, you know, through fiscal year 22, I'm sorry, I didn't insert the 23 figures into that. But for every year up until then, the total cost that we spent for audit fees was $8,000.
So it went from a couple $100 to $7,513 and then up to $31,200.
Right.
84.
Well, if you're making a motion that we propose a cost allocation of $10,000, I would second that.
Okay, I will make that motion. I guess if we have to do this with motions, all right, might as well formalize it. Do we have a
Well-
second?
What I may suggest is doing it all as one motion for a proposed budget.
Okay.
Okay,
So that's one element to it. The second one is putting all of the other funds into that line 52. And the third one is whether you use the current year's budget amount or you want to increase it by 2.5%.
It seems arbitrary.
It is. I mean, it's all sort of arbitrary, but
Yeah.
so the recommendation, if I may, would be to keep the current year budget numbers the same for next year and I guess the year after as well, rather than increasing it. 2, adding in the funds that we have available to us on line 52. And 3, to put 10 grand in for the cost allocation.
And otherwise, if we add that money into the one line item, our tax would be even more.
Yeah,
It
that's,
could
yeah,
be.
yeah.
Well, it could be. I mean, you know, so the board approved for this fiscal year cost allocation of 31,284. And I think whether our fund budget is 1.9 million or if it's 190,000, that's what we're gonna get charged.
Is there a way to legally have different funds for different purposes, like have operating fund versus reserves? So that we don't.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at, like. and-
Effectively, the township has separate funds. Depending on the amount, and some of them are invested and some of them are in cash, but that's really not our decision as to how the treasurer allocates, money that we have. Is it, Barry? We don't have anything to say about how the money from the millage is actually invested.
No,
Well,
that's the treasurer's job.
although in nonprofit terms, to your point about like, what do taxpayers want to invest in? Like, they probably want to invest at least 90% into our program,
Right.
which is into the
Land
acquisition and, right? And so, I mean, like Charity Navigator, I go to that every year when I make my, donations, contributions.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at like what percentage of, the organization's budget is program versus,
Right.
operations or whatever. So that's where I'm good with the 10,000, but I also think we should be clear, like, what is our case for that? Like, on what basis are we
Well,
saying
that's a
that?
good point, because we make a point of, that we did in our presentation to the board the other night, of what percentage is actually the cost of creating this program? That is, what is Barry's time? What are the various things that go into acquiring a property? And we're very proud of the fact that it was something like, what was it, 11.8%? I don't recall.
Correct.
Which, again, if you look at Charity Navigator, that's pretty good
Yeah,
for
yeah.
nonprofit. Now, we're not a nonprofit, but if in fact we're paying 30,000, that's part of what
Right.
our percentage goes
Oh, yeah,
up.
that
Yeah.
cost allocation
Yeah.
puts us, we
Yeah.
love Charity
Yeah.
Navigator.
Yes, exactly. And that seems to go against the,
Which is a powerful
The-
argument,
the-
and one that's always been attached to my discussions
Yeah,
with the
okay.
manager and with Jessica, so.
we should just, I just wanted to make sure that like I understood if we said yes on this 10,000, like where are we going for, where are we trying to go from there?
Mhm.
Assuming they're gonna come back and say no.
So I just tried a quick calculation, it's not exactly accurate. But looking at this year's amended budget, I did $30,000, which is a little bit less than the actual cost allocation figure that was approved. Divided by 710, which is the total revenues expected from the millage, and that's a little over 4%. And if I did 31,284 divided by 710, 670, it'd probably be a tad more than that, so it's
Mhm.
4 or 5%.
Of the millage, but she's not basing it on the millage collection.
Correct, but just, if you look at it just from a certain fiscal year standpoint.
A kind of standardized way, that year to year, it's more predictable that way, you're
Yeah.
suggesting.
It's 4 or 5%. And, it's, I'll leave it at that.
But if you take out if you only put the cost allocation percentage to our actual operating costs, that percentage is actually quite high, right? That's $30,000 on.
Yeah.
Our
Like if we
budget.
wanted to meet Charity Navigator standards, we push back, instead of having 10,000, because it might sound arbitrary, say we want to meet best practices for nonprofit entities. So we propose 10% cost allocation. And that would include any of Chris's services that might come into play.
If you look at the end balance, this is column C in the database that was provided by the consultant, which is the actual figures for the fiscal year that ended March 31 of this year. You can see that we spent $2,100 on consultants, which is Carlisle Workman, whenever we asked them to do maps or evaluations of properties. We spent 30 grand on me, spent a little over 10 grand on legal. We spent $8,700 on due diligence.
Well, we need to kind of wrap this here, we got a lot more to cover.
So so is that a motion for those things that I will then insert into this draft budget and forward. That is that we're gonna keep the figures, the budgeted figures for this fiscal year for next year. And change the line 52 to reflect what we actually have available to us. And then 3 is 10 grand for cost allocation.
Yes. Is
I
that-
think with all that, the 10 grand just sounds a little arbitrary.
I think that that's a good point.
I just,
Can we,
Well,
can
you
we
know, it's
clean that
going to
up
be
a little?
negotiated anyways, right?
is there but would it give us more ammunition if we said a percentage because this is how we're thinking about this instead of just a random?
What would be a percentage that approximates 10 grand from the $700,000 expected to be collected?
So
I mean, yeah, we've got extra operating expenses besides those. So actually, it might even be high, 10%.
So $10,000 divided by 730 for a total expected revenue from this, next tax collection is 1.4%.
Well, what if we said 1.5%? Sounds a little bit more,
So 728.
less precise.
That's 728. 436. Times 1.5.
yeah.
It's 10,926.
1.5%? Does that sound like a better way to represent our interests?
Okay, I think it does.
We can make a good case for that. What is it again, Barry? It's 10,000.
10,926 and 50.
Janine, does that sound right?
Yeah, that's good.
And there's I think I brought this up before, and maybe it doesn't make sense, but there's, there are best practices with municipal research. Cost allocation, like what are best practices?
Well, if we take that route, we're gonna come up against the consultants that they spend a lot of money on.
Yeah.
to Figure this out.
Well, I feel better about 1.5% than an arbitrary flat number.
Okay,
So can we make that a motion then? I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. All right, we'll see what happens, and as I said, I think we'll expect the scrutiny applied to this, but we'll just deal with that, and if we don't get through this year, maybe next.
Rob's got his hand up.
We're not quite ready for public comments.
Ask for no votes. Could you ask for the aye votes? But you didn't ask for the no votes or abstentions.
Yeah, is there any no votes? No, I think we can look around and see that there's no votes. All right, open session consultants report.
yes. Several things here. That one. So had a conversation, actually going to the PPP meeting, since we last met to talk about the Levine Kempter access easement. That we have along, the 8 acres that we sold to, Arthur and Marjorie Levine, that we don't anticipate utilizing since we bought the adjacent property. And which has, but the Levine and Kempter easement has a little area in its northwest corner that's usable for us if we have access from the east, which we now do, and from the north, which we don't yet, but hope to sometime soon. But that expires in about 1.5 years, I think it is. And so there was some discussion about whether we might do some trading there to say we would, even though it's the same family, they're different ownerships, that we would trade the access easement that we have on the Levine parents' property for a longer term easement on the Levine and Kempter property. So that's just an item for consideration, nothing to act on that.
Excuse me, trustee Riser, can you let Ryan Yapel in, please? Thank you.
We've talked about financials.
Wait, hold on, Barry. I think somebody's
No, I appreciate it. I didn't see him in the waiting room.
No
my-
problem.
My
That's,
apologies and welcome, Ryan. It's a good one.
There's continuing discussions with the city of Ann Arbor about expanding the greenbelt area. To cover, to be able to spend funds on source water protection. They're building a new water treatment plant. They want the water upstream, coming into Barton Pond to be as clean as possible. And so now they're interested in expanding the greenbelt area. So
Wow.
basically that would be all of Scio Township. Right now, it's about 2/3 of Scio Township, so all the way to our western boundary. It would include all of Webster Township as well, which is basically all in the Huron River watershed upstream of Barton Pond, and Dexter Township as well, and Northfield Township. All those places that are upstream of Barton Pond.
Is that land generally or land near creeks, near the river?
Yeah, so I
What's
mean,
the general relationship between aquifers and streams, creeks, et cetera?
yeah, I think the emphasis is gonna be on, for that part of it anyway, for properties that have water resources on them that are heading toward the Huron River, surface water. So if you got a stream crossing the property, for example,
Like Honey Creek?
Honey Creek,
Adjacent?
definitely.
Yeah.
The creeks, things like that?
yeah, I mean,
Culverts.
yeah. Yeah,
Sister lakes, or, that kind of stuff.
yeah. Anything that's got, I would say, I mean, again, under discussion, but it seems like it's gonna be acted on sometime early next year by city council. To change the focus of the program. But there's also discussions that I was in a Zoom just yesterday about some other initiatives that the city's taken on. For which other funding sources might be available. Like they're have this carbon neutrality plan, and one of the considerations was buying carbon offsets on the market. And the suggestion was made that maybe a better way to do that would be to conserve natural area lands with standing trees on them, or prairies or something of that nature. And they seem to be receptive to that as well. So there's several things in discussion that could provide us with some additional funding sources from the city of Ann Arbor. I'll keep you posted on that. Actually had a conversation with Remy Long from the Greenbelt program this afternoon about the Lake Erie RCPP, which I thought pretty much dead, but he's God
It
bless him.
lives.
He's still trying to hammer out something that can be to our benefit. He said that he is meeting with the state conservationist, who's the head of the Natural Resources Conservation Service here in Michigan, that he's actually coming to Ann Arbor to talk to Remy. My sense is that, there's $7.5 million of RCPP funds that haven't been, not a dime of it's been spent because we've been log jammed with these.
Is this represented by existing applications? Or is this just out there and somebody's going to need to apply for it? I mean.
So the way the RCPP works is that we all got together and said, we want to do conservation easement projects. And we're gonna match the federal grant money on a 1-to-1 basis. We applied for 10 million, they gave us 7.4. So from there, it basically works sort of like the ACEP program, but that the funds are immediately available to us as partners here. And so we would submit a property, and we did this, here for one of the Andrus easements, for example, where we just submit it and say, it meets the criteria, and so we get 50% of the funds from our CPP, and then we come up with the other 50% from whatever sources. It could be the state program, our millage, the Greenbelt millage, the county millage, doesn't matter what the other fund or discount from the landowner. But guaranteed 50%. So it's, at minimum $15 million worth of potential easement purchases, half of it covered by federal grants. And they haven't spent any money on it at all because of these log jams that have been in place. And they ain't looking good for them. They're like, well, how come you haven't spent this money? So they're trying to find a solution to this.
Isn't Remy running up against a deadline though?
No, it was a 5-year grant award,
Oh,
and we're, I think, 2 years into it.
oh,
at
I
this
see,
point.
okay.
So
there's
didn't we
still more.
apply and just get stuck in the process, or have we not actually?
We've never submitted a property
Oh,
for
okay.
this RCPP. We did for the old RCPP, and that's all clear. but none for the current one because, you know, there's the application process or what kinds of properties are actually gonna fund through this. Is just there's never been agreement. But it seems like there's some continuing glimmer of hope and, you know, credit to Remy for this is that he's been talking about this and we'll see if that goes anywhere. We also chatted in this conversation I had with him earlier today about the PA 116 program that we talked about a bit last time, where people who are enrolled in the program can get a state tax credit, but now the state ag department is saying if you convey a perpetual easement on your property, then you have to give up your 116 agreement, so you can no longer access those tax credits. And that's something that's potentially detrimental to us. If somebody is enrolled in that program at this point and taking advantage of those tax credits, then, you know, depending on how much they get out of it, they may say, I don't want your one-time payment of for the easement. You know, I'm gonna go with, you know, this annual payment that I'm getting back. So he's trying to navigate that as well. And there's we're looking for some guidance from the state ag department on that, and that is forthcoming, not in hand yet, but they understand it's an issue. It's a new or different interpretation of what the statute says. And there may be, you know, a solution out there as well that, which would be adding the state as a co-grantee to the easement. And in that case, they may be able to say, okay, we don't have to terminate the contract. And I don't see any downside to that whenever we have state money involved, which we have in a couple instances. They're a co-holder of the easement anyway. So even if there's not state money involved, we just add them as a co-holder and people can still take advantage of these tax credits. That would be a fine solution. So anyway, we're working through all that. I'll keep you posted. And that's all for the open session report.
Okay, we'll ask about attendance at the next meeting. Anyone here have a problem with meeting on January 11th? Okay, so at least we'll have us. We'll see if Marty and Tim are gonna make that. And summary then, Barry, of what you're gonna talk about in closed session?
Yeah,
for people still online?
Yeah, the main thing is that we have a property where the owner would like us to move quickly. And so we'll have a discussion and may make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for our due diligence, environmental assessment and survey, and also for a purchase of an easement. That's the main thing. And then we have another property that we're ready to move ahead on also. Not as strict of a timeline, but same thing, ESA and survey and recommendation for funds to expend for purchasing conservation easement. And we have a new application that we'll talk about briefly. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further public comments? Rob, did you have something?
Yes, Will, I believe you might have to redo your budget vote. When money is involved, I believe you have to call the roll. A voice vote is not sufficient for those sorts of votes.
You're not free today and.
All right, well, if that's the case, I guess
Are we spending money? Are we making a recommendation to the board who's gonna do what the board is gonna do with respect to the cap?
The latter.
Yeah, so Rob, I don't think we're making an allocation of money. I think we're just making a recommendation. I don't mind doing a roll call vote on it. But I don't know that we need it, given that we are advisory. We don't adopt our budget. We make recommendations and the board gives us our budget. I think that's the case.
I beg your pardon, and I apologize for raising my hand during your meeting.
No, Rob.
that's right. No, keep us honest.
Yeah, I think they wish they could spend the money, but they can't.
Yeah, that's true. Anything else, Rob?
Nope, that's
Anybody
it.
else?
Well done, Ken.
So we're good then? All right, then, if I could entertain a motion to go into closed session for purposes of
I make a
Discussion.
motion To go
You wanna read this?
You want to read what, why we're
Yes,
going to
please.
closed session?
Yeah, we've gotta be a little punctilious about this.
Yeah, let's.
I, Lisa Pappas, move that we go into closed session for discussion of pending property evaluations pursuant to section 15.268D of the Michigan Open Acts meeting, specifically to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease that real property is obtained.
I'll second the motion. Discussion,
Okay. Do a roll call.
roll call, all right.
Janine,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Will,
Yes,
and I'm a yes.
all right, we are now in closed session.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
you.
Thanks for joining us.
Reach out to me if you have any questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Are you local or in the internet, or do you have a card or a flyer or
Yeah.
something?
And I passed out my card to everybody but you. Let me give you one.
Right.
I am local. I'm in Dexter. I'm also at the office right next door.
Are you a farmer?
Does everyone have Barry's closed session minutes?
And poultry as well. Yeah.
Bees and chickens.
Beef and chickens is the primary. I don't have an orchard,
Very, oh,
It's right there.
so.
okay,
I don't wanna. Oh, sorry, that's right.
No, he's.
I'll get it from somebody else. I don't wanna hold these folks.
I know how to find you.
Uh,
Come on.
Um,
Nice to meet you.
I'm gonna stop the video. I'm gonna
is
stop.
the door
recording.
actually locked?
I'm
Oh,
gonna.
you know how you lock the door outside?
There are still some folks on. Are
It
we
is
gonna-
locked?
Should they stick around? Is there gonna be something, a vote after this?
There is going to be a vote, obviously.
Okay, so, just FYI, there might be a vote after this. Stop the video, stop the recording. You, I did everything that you're supposed to do.
Start. Go. Okay, all right, here we are back in open session.
5:59 p.m.
Would you please make, can we do them both together?
I think we need to do
We
separately.
do, yeah, we'll do them separately, two motions.
So I'm gonna move that we recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of an environmental site assessment, a survey, and up to $365,000 in funding to purchase a conservation easement on property application number 2023-4.
Okay, second,
Second.
And is that out of LPs, is that out of, to be taken out of Fund 233, Open Space Land Preservation?
yes,
Or is
And
that
by we, she means the land.
the board? I mean,
Yes, the land preservation.
They're out of, Fund 233, Open Space Land Preservation. That's part of the.
Are you adding that to the motion?
Yeah, because we want, it's not general fund.
Okay, then.
Out of, what is the,
It's on our,
yeah,
what we all looked at it earlier.
can you just read it off?
Fund 233, Open Space Land Preservation.
Fine.
Can we vote on that or do we need to
Do you want me to restate it?
I don't
restate
think
it?
we will consider an amendment, but please restate the motion.
I'll do my best. I am making a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of an environmental site assessment, a survey, and up to $365,000 in funding out of Fund 233, the Open Space Land Preservation Fund, to purchase a conservation easement on property application number 2023-4.
Okay, you have a second to the,
Lisa was the second.
all right, it's made and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. Now, we have a second motion,
And I have one prepared. Do you want me to do that one?
Please.
yeah,
I am going to propose that we recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of an environmental site assessment, a survey, and up to $105,000 in funding out of Fund 233, the Open Space Land Preservation Fund, to purchase property application number 2021-3.
Is that a conservation easement or a fee simple or what, what?
That
It's a
is
conservation
a
easement,
conservation, yeah, I did leave that out, yes. So I'll read that again if you want.
please.
Okay. Recommend approval of an environmental site assessment, a survey, and up to $105,000 in funding out of Fund 233, the Open Space Land Preservation Fund, to purchase a conservation easement on property application number 2021-3.
Second,
Second,
all right, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Other than discussion, you recommend approval to the board of trustees.
Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye, opposed? That was 2021-3.
2021-3.
Got it.
Yes,
Okay, we all swear on that?
yes.
Okay, then, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. I'll second that. Motion, made and seconded that we adjourn. Is this again a roll call?
No, just.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Well, okay, thank you all for
No.
staying, persisting,